Oh, you didn't know Chatterson about to make you feel the pounce! Period. Hello everybody and welcome back to Chatting Smack. As always, I am your host, Chatterson, and today I have a very Impact Wrestling themed topic for you, as it is Friday, and tonight Impact will be airing on Pursuit on Twitch, so make sure that you catch it. But today's topic is more about the people that I've been seeing online recently on multiple wrestling forums, not so much on Twitter, but other places that I kind of stalk around online and lurk. And it's this question as to where the ECW feeling, where the ECW spirit came from in Impact Wrestling, and how that every time they hark back to it and every time they call back to it, that it's really silly because they have no connection there. And I would totally disagree with that premise. I believe that Impact Wrestling has a lot to do with ECW. So I'm going to talk about that to begin with, and then afterwards we're going to get on to my feelings of 5 guys who should be in the front running for the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame spot this year. We're heading into the time period where it's usually announced, and then they usually get inducted at Slammiversary. So we're in that sort of period where we're about to find out who is going to have that honour this year, and I've got 5 guys who I think should be in the running, as I say. So first we're going to get back to that topic, and that's where the ECW spirit, the ECW feel in Impact Wrestling really comes from. I was about to say TNA there, but it really does span back to even the very first TNA weekly pay-per-view. The very first match we saw, Jerry Lynn, ECW mainstay, a guy who had many fantastic matches with Rob Van Dam, came to the WWF, had cool light heavyweight championship run. Wasn't the biggest, best run you could imagine for a guy like that, but at least he got the championship, got some spotlight. There was that hilarious promo from WWF New York. But what Jerry Lynn was best known for was innovating his sort of high-flying, strike-based, high risk sort of in-ring style. He sort of pioneered that with Rob Van Dam, and he brought that to Impact Wrestling with him. He brought that to TNA with him on that very first show. He teamed up with AJ Styles and Low-Ki, 2 other guys who you have to imagine, if ECW had lived beyond its years, those are 2 talents that Paul Heyman would have had his eyes on. He did say that he wanted to make ECW more of a Ring of Honor blended with ECW style product. And I feel like even though we had the WCW bullshittery, we had Buff Bagwell, Ken Shamrock, R-Truth, all those kind of guys in the early days, Scott Hall, Jeff Jarrett, the WCW roster was well and present, but what people really weren't taking notice of, well, they were, but they were more taking the originality of the X Division. They weren't taking the spirit of the X Division, which was ECW. You even seen guys like Easy Money come in and have a run of matches which I actually really enjoyed them back in the day. You also had guys like Vampiro in, you had Raven come in, who was a big main event deal, you had Rhino come in, you had all these guys, this influx of ECW talent. You also had the Hard 10 tournament going on in the early days as well. That even featured guys like Sonny Siaki, Devon Storm, who was a crowbar in WCW, but who was also known for that hardcore action, that ECW hardcore vibe. In fact, as far as I remember, in that Hard 10 tournament, we also seen Perry Saturn. I think we seen New Jack, and speaking of New Jack, his tag team was Shark Boy. These are all memorable things about the early days of Impact Wrestling, and that vibe was really working for them. And it even grew with them throughout the years. You saw Rhino and Raven both ascend to main event status. You had Raven's Clockwork Orange House of Fun matches. We saw Rhino take on AJ Styles. We saw their match in Elevation X. There was all this innovative, sort of real, edgy stuff mixed with that crazy, over-the-top WWF Attitude Era style. And that's what people were longing for. People were longing for that entertainment, those storylines, that over the top, anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation vibe, but with that more real throw down, all out, strong style, hard hitting action that everybody's kind of used to in this day and age. And that's okay for the fans to want. It's not asking too much. I think we're all played out on guest hosts and celebrity tie-ins and gimmickry and bullshit and Santina Marella and kayfabe. We were all tired of that. And I think it's even more of a callback to the territory days, but in the respect that we want legitimacy in a kayfabe universe. And I think by tying in the Undead Realm and the Sami Callihan OVE stuff and all this really over-the-top gimmickry that we used to love about the Attitude Era, and combining it with that real hard-hitting, not just ECW, but sort of strong style vibe, what ECW would become is the perfect way to go about doing things. Eddie, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but Eddie Edwards, his new gimmick has suited him down to a T. People used to mock that guy for being the blandest thing going, and now he's the most entertaining act on any Impact Wrestling show going. And even the talent they're bringing in is somewhat along that ECW picking up a broken toy and putting it back together again vibe. We're talking about Madman Fulton. We're talking about the unknown, but, well, on the main stage, on the indie scene, he's killed it, but Josh Alexander, the walking weapon coming in and tagging with Ethan Page. These are all guys who have been busting their ass and working hard for years. And it took a company like ECW, and it takes a company like Impact Wrestling to take guys like that and bet all their chips on them. And that is the spirit of ECW. That is where the connection is made. This isn't WCW throwing its big bucks around. I know it's had some financial backing over the time, but TNA were always the underdog. They were always scrappy. And from the beginning, they've took those ECW veterans. We've took our Kid Cashes, we've took our Easy Moneys, we've took our New Jacks, we've took our Petty Saturns, we've took our Sandmans, our Ravens, our Rhinos, and we've combined them with young, hungry guys. And then we've looked to places like WCW and the WWF, and over the years we've made some mistakes, but we've also made some huge successes. Matt Hardy took steps in his career and went to places that we never thought he would. Jeff Hardy became the Antichrist of professional wrestling and took steps we never thought he would, for better or worse. Bubba Ray Dudley became an undisputed main event talent. Bobby Lashley, Drew Galloway, the list goes on and on and on. Heck, we took the chains off Christian and let him run free. That ECW vibe, that take yourself, turn yourself up to 100 and put yourself out in front of that crowd on that platform attitude has been there since weekly pay-per-view 1. So you want to turn around and ask me, how does Hardcore Justice make sense? How did EV 2.0 make sense? I'll tell you why. Because whether we've turned around, shook his hand, respected it and sent it on its way or not, that attitude, that vibe, that history is what makes Impact Wrestling not just the successor to ECW, but the true successor to TNA. We're finally over that hill. We're finally over that hurdle. We know what we are. We know what entertainment is. And the company is not devoid of criticism. I do not agree with the Eli Drake situation. I think there should have been steps to punish him. It could all end up being a work. But Twitter's the Wild West. And if he insulted Jordan Grace's boyfriend, I'm sorry. But Becky Lynch walks around insulting whoever. Why would the character Eli Drake know who Jonathan Gresham was? But that's another topic for another day. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for my top 5 picks for this year's Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Oh, fucking groovy, man. It's time for Chad Chatterson's top 5 picks for the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame. Ain't that a fucking pimp, brother?
Thanks very much for that, ladies and gentlemen. It is now time for the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame. My top 5 picks for who I think should be inducted this year. So we're going to kick things off with number 5. There's no particular order here, so it's not 5 to 1 or 1 to 5. This is just 5 picks. Number 1, Jerry Lynn. Now, I've mentioned him a lot in this video, but he's a real pioneer of the X Division. He's done a lot for Impact Wrestling over the years. Really helped innovate that style that became unique to TNA. And he gave his whole latter half of his career to the company, really busted his ass for Impact. And I think, whether it be in the ring or as an agent, the amount that Jerry Lynn's given to Impact Wrestling is undeniable that he should be in the Hall of Fame at this stage. And with his good friend Rob Van Dam returning back to the fold, it'd just be a really nice moment to see Rob actually induct Jerry into the Hall of Fame. So while everything, and of course we have these big Philadelphia shows at the ECW arena coming up, it's a very ECW themed episode. It's a very ECW themed list, I think you'll find, but we won't spoil too much. Yeah, number 5, Jerry Lynn. 4, Rhino. Yep, that's right. We've mentioned the Man Beast already in this video, and I think now that his contract's done with the WWE and his former partner in crime Don Callis is at the helm of Impact Wrestling, I think it would be amazing to see the return of the Network and the War Machine to Impact Wrestling. Had those amazing matches with AJ Styles, including the Elevation X match, was involved in huge angles, including the TNA Frontline versus Main Event Mafia angle, big Monsters Balls matches with Raven, Sabu, Abyss. I think actually Monty Brown might have been in that match as well, or it might have been a separate match. But Rhino's always been involved in that hardcore action in TNA. Saved Bound for Glory 2005 by all means necessary. Did triple duty that night. Walked away at the end with the NWA Championship. What an amazing story for Rhino, and I think one of the few guys that really suffered from the Jeff Jarrett syndrome. I think if they'd really bet on Rhino and given him a run there, it would have been a lot more enjoyable. We did get to see a little bit of time with him as champion, but not long enough to leave any real lasting impression, which was not Rhino's fault. He left his own legacy in the company without the need of that championship belt, and more power to him. 3? Who's 3? Well, I hope I'm not going to get in any trouble with the law for saying so, but number 3 is America's Most Wanted. That's right, Chris Harris, James Storm, legendary tag team in Impact Wrestling. Done and said it all. Fantastic matches as a team, fantastic matches against each other. Really sort of carved their own sort of path as one of the founding fathers of Impact Wrestling, especially the tag team division. They've had amazing feuds in the past with LAX, the Naturals, Team 3D, and so many other tag teams. I think in the early days, the New Church. A lot of history for America's Most Wanted, and I think the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame is the perfect place to shine a spotlight back on Chris Harris and Storm. Both of them made their way to the top of the wrestling ladder. James Storm's still out there kicking a lot of butt. I think Chris Harris is mostly retired now, working some small indies. I think out of... I don't know where he's wrestling out of, to be honest. I wanted to say Las Vegas, but I don't think that's correct. But yeah, he's still going. He was backstage at some of the recent Impact Wrestling pay-per-views. I want to say it was this past Slammiversary, actually. So it would be perfect to send Chris Harris, James Storm, tip that hat to their legacy in Impact Wrestling, send them this year's Slammiversary, and induct them into that prestigious Hall of Fame. And that moves us on swiftly to another ECW guy, a guy who made his legacy at Slammiversary, becoming the NWA World Heavyweight Champion in the first ever King of the Mountain match that happened at a Slammiversary. I think there was one before this on the weekly pay-per-views, but this one was at Slammiversary 2005, and I am talking about none other than Raven, the man whose destiny it was to pick up that NWA Championship and carry it forward for Impact Wrestling. Now, Raven came into Impact Wrestling at a time where Impact Wrestling was still only really a fledgling promotion, and he had just left the WWE. There was a lot of other options for Raven out there to probably go on and do some other stuff, but he came in, he pledged his body and his mind to Impact Wrestling, really innovated things, brought in the Raven's Clockwork Orange House of Fun match, was essential in some of those Monsters Ball stuff. Some of his feuds he had, even the feud he had with Eric Watts and Diamond Dallas Page, very cerebral, very mind game based. I remember a lot of great things that Raven done in Impact Wrestling, and that's because Raven put his 100% effort into doing great things in Impact Wrestling. And while they might have only bet on him one time as far as the NWA Championship goes, and they fucked him over completely by taking that title off of him and putting it straight back onto Jeff Jarrett, which nobody wanted. I think everybody thought it was Raven's time. Everybody was ready for a Raven run on the top of the company, and the fact that they just fucked around and put it back on Jeff Jarrett is inexcusable. And still, Raven didn't give up there, even with angles like serotonin, which wasn't the most popular thing among fans. I didn't see Raven half-ass it. I seen some bad booking, but I didn't see Raven actually half-ass it, and that's because he worked his hardest for Impact Wrestling. Wasn't there from day one, but you could definitely consider Raven as somebody that you would look at Impact Wrestling and think of as one of those original guys who helped build up that company brick by brick. And as far as I'm concerned, it was a Hall of Fame career. You can't deny it. It was amazing to see him back this year in that angle with Eddie Edwards and Moose, and helping Eddie get back out into the world, get revenge, reclaim his wife, use those kind of mind games. It was amazing. I'm a big Raven mark, as you can probably tell. I've probably talked about Raven longer than any of the other entries, but that's the man, that's the myth, that's the legend, that's Raven. And number one on my list, I'm kind of cheating a bit, I'm throwing in a stable there. That stable is Triple X, Christopher Daniels, Loki, Elix Skipper, all three men, all responsible for some of the most memorable moments in Impact Wrestling history. Elix Skipper and his cage walk, Loki and his innovative style, his strikes, his kicks, his match with Amazing Red from the early days, his triple threat ladder match with Styles and Jenny Lynn, Christopher Daniel, all of them X Division Championship reigns. I don't know if Skipper held the belt, but Loki and Daniels, X Division reigns out the wazoo, Tag Team Championship reigns out the wazoo. Daniels and Styles, Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles has some Tag Team Championship runs. Those three men, when you look at the pillars of the early days of Impact Wrestling, the moments, the championship runs. I remember when Christopher Daniels came down off that top rope with a baseball bat, I think it was, and dropped the baseball bat from the top rope onto Jeff Jarrett. It was one of the coolest moments I've seen. It still sticks in my head. Now I know there's AEW tie-ins there, but we don't give a damn about those AEW tie-ins. Christopher Daniels, his home was in Impact Wrestling. I know there was a turbulent relationship, but if we just do it for Slammiversary, there doesn't have to be any matches, there doesn't need to be any in-ring action. Maybe from Skipper and Loki if they can still do it. But I definitely think that for their sake, I want to celebrate them. I want to take my hat off to them. I want to give them a round of applause. I don't care if Daniels never steps into an Impact Wrestling ring and wrestles a match ever again. It'd be a travesty, but it doesn't mean that I want to not see them up there on the podium in the bright lights of Slammiversary with that whole crowd giving them a standing ovation. Because they were pioneers. And if anything that the Hall of Fame should do is give credit to the pioneers of Impact Wrestling. And Daniels, Loki and Skipper, I think they took from the environment around them, the places they had been, that knew what the replacement for ECW vibe would be, and they took it to its logical conclusion. They helped evolve it. They worked with the veterans. They made magic. And that's what pro wrestling is all about. And that is why, even though this 1 to 5 was not ranked, Triple X in Impact Wrestling history will always be that much closer to number 1. Well, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was my top 5 picks for the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame this year. And I hope you've enjoyed following me along on this ride and learned something, or at least thought about the spirit of ECW and Impact Wrestling, so that if you come across some of those haters that I was talking about, you'll be able to explain to them exactly why we give that nod of the hat to those days of the extreme. If you've enjoyed this, follow me at Chatterson on Twitter, donate at paypal.me/ChatChatterson, and if you like my articles on belly2belly.wordpress.com, well, you're going to love my follow-up, A Chat with Calder McCall, coming soon. Peace out, chat cats, and all love.